Hello and welcome to Sleep Harmony. Today, let's read a classic book by J.M. Barrie. This is the story of Peter Pan, a young boy who is mischievous, brave, and never grows up. He lives on a distant island called Neverland, along with a group of fairies, redskins, mermaids, and pirates. And the only way to get in and out of this island is by flying, which is only possible for children to do who believe in it. Before we start this video, I wanted to say that I am working hard to bring the best quality to my videos. It would be appreciated if you can subscribe to my channel to support me. Thank you, and let's begin. Chapter 1. Peter Breaks Through the Darlings. Have a great time together as a family. Wendy, John, and Michael are the couple's 3 kids, and they have a Newfoundland dog as their Nana. The kids visit an imaginary land called the Neverlands in their fantasies at night. Wendy tells her mother about Peter Pan, who visits the nursery at night. But Mrs. Darling believes he is a made-up character only in her daughter's imagination. Mrs. Darling has a dream about Peter Pan arriving in England from Neverland, and when she wakes up, she sees him from the window. Chapter 2. The Shadow Nana tackles Peter as soon as he enters the nursery, and he falls off the window of the first floor. Mrs. Darling goes looking for him, fearful that he has died, and when she returns, she sees Nana with a shadow in her mouth. Following a lengthy fight over medicines, Michael refers to his father as Cowardly Custard and places the medicine in Nana's bowl. Nana is confined to the backyard by Mr. Darling and starts barking. Mrs. Darling reluctantly puts the kids to bed. Wendy explains that Nana is barking loudly outside because she senses danger. Mrs. Darling is nervous but bids farewell and departs with Mr. Darling to a nearby party. The stars tell Peter to come inside. Chapter 3. Come away, Mr. and Mrs. Darling are relieved to see the nursery lights as they looked back. One by one, the kids fell asleep. Soon after, a brighter light replaced the night lights in the room. The light that surrounded Peter Pan was flickering. It was Tinker Bell, a small fairy. In the nursery, Peter Pan looks for his shadow with Tinker Bell. Peter weeps, frustrated that he can't attach his shadow to his body. Wendy opens her eyes to see Peter, and they exchange greetings. Wendy recommends Tinker Bell to sew Peter's shadow to his body. Peter explains that he has been going to the nursery to listen to stories because neither he nor the lost boys, children who fall out of baby carriages, have any good stories to share. Wendy agrees to accompany Peter. He entices her by portraying the magic of Neverland and all the motherly duties she may conduct there. Peter also says he'll bring John and Michael along. Wendy wakes up her brothers and informs them that Peter Pan has arrived and will teach them how to fly. Nana, on the other hand, is barking loudly to warn Mr. and Mrs. Darling about the danger in the nursery. She finally snaps the chain and dashes to the party. The Darlings return home to discover the kids flying through the night sky with Peter Pan. Chapter 4. The Flight Peter and the 3 kids fly across the sky to Neverland. As the journey progresses, they become fatigued and hungry. Wendy advises her brothers to treat Peter with respect because he was the one in charge. Finally, they arrived at Neverland's shores. Peter informs the kids about the island's crew, which includes the ruthless pirate Captain James Hook, who wields a hook in his right hand. Tinkerbell informs Peter that the pirates have spotted them and have drawn a large gun known as the Long Tom. The pirates will fire directly at them if Tinkerbell continues to light their route. Finally, the kids decide to hide her beneath John's hat. However, the pirates shoot at them anyhow. Peter floats away to sea. Wendy soars to the sky with Tinkerbell, and the two kids fly to higher places. Tinkerbell intends to play Wendy a bad joke, and Wendy is helpless to stop her. Chapter 6. The Little House. The boys form a ring around Wendy, and they realize she isn't a bird. Peter Pan himself appears out of nowhere. He is taken aback by the lad's silence and sadness. Peter is led gravely to Wendy's body by Toodles. Peter Pan almost hits Toodles with an arrow when he accepts responsibility for the killing. Wendy's hand, though, holds him back. The arrow was kept from injuring her too much by Peter's button, which she wears as a necklace. When Peter discovers that Tink is to blame for the accident, he warns her that he will never see her again. To avoid disturbing Wendy, the boys construct a house around her sleeping area. They build a hut for her and bring her wonderful goods. The lost boys are then discovered by John and Michael. Peter enlists their assistance in the construction of the house. Peter carefully examines Wendy's home for every possible feature before knocking on the door when he believes it is complete. When she opens the door, the boys greet her warmly, telling her that they are her children and that she is their mother. Despite the fact that Wendy claims to be only a girl, she admits to having a maternal nature and offers to attempt to be their mother. She invites them inside so she can finish telling them the Cinderella story. Chapter 7. The Home Underground. Wendy, John, and Michael are having the hollow holes of their trees fitted so that they can access the underground. Wendy has been cooking, sewing, and doing laundry for the boys. She is concerned, though, about her parents, particularly because John and Michael occasionally forget who they are. Wendy tests her boys on their parents' characteristics in order for them to remember home. For a short time, Peter becomes completely absorbed in a new game, which consists in pretending not to have adventures, as well as in doing regular activities that all youngsters do, such as going for walks or simply sitting around. Wendy and the boys tell stories about fantasy adventures in their underground home, typically portraying redskins and pirates in their games. The group decides to visit the Mermaid's Lagoon while deciding which adventure to take next. Chapter 8. The Mermaid's Lagoon. Wendy, Peter, and the Lost Boys spend a lot of time in the lagoon, swimming and listening to the mermaids sing. The lagoon turns hazardous around nightfall, and the mermaids begin to howl. Wendy always makes sure the boys get some rest after lunch. As they snooze on Marooner's Rock one afternoon, Peter senses pirates nearby, and everyone dives underwater. A boat with 2 pirates and Princess Tiger Lily starts approaching, But as their boat crashes, the pirates abandon her on Marooner's Rock to drown. In the voice of Hook, Peter tells the pirates to release the princess. The befuddled pirates fearfully obey and release the princess. Hook, in the meantime, informs the other pirates that the lost boys have found a mother. Hook agrees to Smee's plan to kidnap the boy's mother and turn her into the pirate's mother. Peter is determined to meet Captain Hook as a fight breaks out between the pirates and the lost boys. Hook deceives Peter and injures him. When the lads see Hook fleeing in terror but can't see Wendy or Peter, they think they've already departed. Peter and Wendy, on the other hand, are still on the edge. Wendy has passed out from terror and tiredness. Wendy is carried to safety by the string of Michael's kite around her waist. Peter is alone in no time and is afraid that death will be an enormously tremendous adventure. Chapter 9. The Neverbird. Peter feels the water rising at his feet as he listens to the mermaids returning to their homes. Peter notices a Neverbird desperately attempting to help save him by throwing her nest to his rescue. The bird then tries to persuade Peter to swim to the nest when she can't get it any closer to his rock. However, they are unable to communicate with one another. The bird soars up after working extremely hard to bring the nest right to Peter's rock. Peter now comprehends her. Peter gently puts the Neverbird's eggs inside a hat and sets it adrift. Peter uses the nest to float to shore when the appreciative bird lands on her eggs. Peter and Wendy will soon be at home with the other boys. Chapter 10. The Happy Home. The Redskins unite together with the Lost Boys after Peter saves Tiger Lily's life. Peter is titled Peter, the Great White Father by the Redskins. Wendy has grown annoyed with the mischievous behavior of the Lost Boys. After Wendy refers to Peter as Father, the boys debate. Peter and Wendy continue to relish their parental roles. Nonetheless, Peter is concerned about becoming a father because it would turn him into a man. But Wendy assures him that this is just fiction. When Wendy inquires about his emotions for her, to which he responds, those of a devoted son. Wendy becomes enraged, but they soon forget their differences and have a great time. Wendy tucks everyone into bed and starts telling them their favorite bedtime story. Peter dislikes the story, but he listens nevertheless. Chapter 11. Wendy's Story. Wendy's story is about Mr. and Mrs. Darling, who had 3 children and a dog named Nana. The kids flew away to Neverland when Mr. Darling chained Nana in the yard. Wendy encourages her listeners to consider the sorrowful parents, but the boys remain unconcerned. The 3 children return to their parents' home next in the story, but they are now adults, and their parents are waiting for them with open arms. The children are delighted, but Peter dislikes it. He claims that he previously felt the same way, but that when he went home after many years, he found that his mother had shut the window and a strange boy was sleeping in his bed. Wendy is terrified, and she and her brothers decide that they must return home that night. Peter is in a lot of pain, yet he acts as if he doesn't notice. Wendy's departure grieves the Lost Boys, who are very happy to join when Wendy invites them to accompany her. Except for Peter, they enthusiastically embrace the offer. Peter arranges for the tribe to guide them to the shore and for Tinker Bell to guide them back to England. They're preparing to leave when they hear the start of a terrible conflict between the pirates and the tribe above the ground. Chapter 12. The children are carried off. The pirate attack caught the guys completely off guard. Normally, it was the Redskins that attacked, but Hook opted to strike shortly before dawn when the tribe's power was at its lowest. Everything goes silent when the battle ends. The pirates listen to the lost boys through the hollow woods, hoping to hear what Peter Pan has to say. Meanwhile, Peter is hesitant to leave the shelter of their underground house until the tribe has triumphed. If they hear the tom-tom beating, he claims, it will be a sign of victory. Captain Hook gives Smee a secret signal to bang on the tom-tom now that the pirates have taken it. And each pirate takes a position behind a hollow tree, ready to attack as soon as the lost boys arrive. Chapter 13. Do you believe in fairies? Each boy is taken by a pirate, tied and gagged as they climb out of the tree. Wendy and the boys are placed in Wendy's house cabin, which the pirates carry on their shoulders to the ship. When the pirates and their captives are out of sight, Hook enters the house and discovers Peter soundly sleeping. He returns to his ship after injecting a dose of poison into Peter's medicine. A knock on Peter's door soon wakes him up. Tinker Bell appears and informs Peter that Wendy and the boys have been imprisoned and dragged away. Peter is preparing to chase them down, but first he must take his medication. Peter doesn't trust Tinker Bell when she says it's poisoned, so he prepares to drink it anyhow. Tinker Bell drinks the entire dose to save him. She starts to die, and her light starts to fade away. She can only be saved if a lot of children show that they believe in fairies. All the children dreaming of Neverland are asked to clap their hands if they believe. Tinker Bell regains her health as a result of all the applause. Peter is now on his way to save the others. He needs to walk because flying close enough to the ground to keep an eye out for adversaries would cause the birds to become alarmed. Chapter 14. The pirate ship. On their ship, the Jolly Roger, a few pirates are asleep. Hook, meanwhile, paces the deck, torn between capturing the lads and sweating profusely at the prospect of meeting Peter Pan. He bemoans the fact that he has no young children to cherish. Hook's gloomy tone quickly shifts, and he inquires of the other pirates whether the youngsters are enslaved. The kids are brought before Hook, and he says that while 6 of them will walk the plank and be thrown overboard, and he will keep 2 of them as cabin boys. Hook tells the pirates to capture Wendy when suddenly the crocodile's ticking clock is heard. Terror grips Hook, and he orders the other pirates to hide him. The boys rush to the ship's edge in search of the crocodile, but instead find Peter making clicking sound with his mouth. Chapter 15. Hook or Me. This time, the crocodile followed Peter stealthily after hearing the familiar sound of ticking. Peter continued to tick as he approached the shore and began swimming to the ship. Only when he noticed the pirates' frightened silence did he understand he was still ticking. Peter had already climbed onto the boat. Peter instantly kills a pirate who passes him by. Hook chooses to resume the execution once the other pirates discover the ticking has stopped. He dispatches a pirate to the cabin, but everyone who goes inside doesn't come back out. Everyone thinks the crocodile must be in the cabin, and no one else is willing to enter it. Hook finally decides to dispatch the boys to combat the intruder. Peter releases the children's chains as they enter the cabin. The children and Peter then discreetly exit the cabin. Peter goes over to Wendy, unties her, and takes her place. The pirates mistakenly believe that the sound indicates that all of the boys have died. When Hook orders pirates to throw Wendy, they realize it is in fact Peter, and a deadly conflict begins between the boys and the pirates. Peter's confrontation with Hook has finally arrived. Hook is finally beaten, and he signals Peter to kick him into the waters instead of striking him. Peter grants his wish, and Hook falls into the ocean, pleased that Peter has finally shown poor form. In the water, the crocodile is waiting for Hook. Chapter 16. The Return Home. The pirate ship is sailed by the lost boys with Peter as their captain. Back at the Darlings' house, the nursery has remained unchanged, with the exception that Mr. Darling has relocated into Nana's kennel, believing that his decision to chain Nana outside was the cause of the children's disappearance. Mrs. Darling sleeps wearily in a night nursery rocking chair. She has no idea that the children are on their way home, only 2 miles away. She wakes up from a dream in which her children return. When Wendy, John, and Michael get home, the window is open. While Michael just has a hazy recollection of their nursery, Wendy and John enthusiastically tell him that they have returned home. Wendy suggests that they go to bed so that when their mother arrives in the morning, it will appear as if they never left. Mrs. Darling, on the other hand, has become accustomed to seeing the children sleeping in her dreams and does not react when she sees them in their beds. Each of the kids jumps out of bed, alarmed that their mother has forgotten them, and who finally excitedly screams out to Mr. Darling. Peter stands outside the window, watching as the reunited family embraces. Chapter 17. When Wendy Grew Up. The boys wait outside the house while the Darlings are reunited. Mrs. Darling offers to look after the boys when she meets them. Wendy and her mother approaches Peter and extends an invitation, but he is adamant in his refusal. Wendy agreed to see him once a year to help him with his spring cleaning, and makes Peter pledge that he will not forget her by the time spring arrives. The following year, Peter returns to England to bring Wendy to Neverland, but Wendy realizes that Peter doesn't even remember their adventures anymore. The following year, Peter fails to appear, and Michael begins to doubt his existence. Wendy grows up, becomes a woman, gets married, and has a daughter named Jane, who now sleeps in the children's old nursery. Jane enjoys discussing Neverland with her mother. Peter returned to Wendy years later, but when he learned she had grown up, he began to grieve, and his sobbing awakes Jane. She asks him why he's crying, exactly like Wendy did, and the two quickly become friends. Jane is flying all over the room when Wendy returns. Jane leaves with Peter later that night to undertake his spring cleaning. Wendy grows elderly, and Margaret, Jane's daughter, is now in charge of Peter's spring cleaning. It will continue in this manner indefinitely, as long as children are gay, innocent, and heartless. If you've liked this story, please support me by subscribing to my channel. I work really hard to make the best quality video, and I would appreciate if you would support me. Thank you, and I wish you a good night of sleep.